Welcome back to another episode of Straight to the Point. We're now back with a new series of interviews, which I'm really looking forward to get stuck into, because today we've got somebody on the show who I've got to know probably over the last couple of the years in and out, because he seems to be traveling all over the world all the time, whether he's in America or if he's in the UK or Scotland, wherever. There's always something that he's doing. And after consuming some of his content, looking into his podcast, looking at his Instagram, looking even into emotional videos that he creates, it's one person which I really do trust to have on the show to give you some real straight to the point advice around online marketing, sales, especially if you're a coach or a consultant. This guy is someone, bearing in mind how many events I go to every single year, he is somebody that I always stay and listen to because of his experience and the results that he generates for his clients. And if you go and check him out in the links in the description, you'll see exactly what I mean from day one. So it's my pleasure to welcome Neil Shoney. Welcome to the Straight to the Point podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. And what an intro. That's definitely going to be all downhill from here. Let's see what happens.
Good. It's all good. No, I mean it though, genuinely. From the stuff that I've seen online of you, the word that comes across all the time is authentic. And that's something that's thrown around quite a lot on the internet. People always tell you to be your most authentic self. But I mean, I just watched that video on your sales page about how much you care and the efforts that you go into to deliver results for people. And you know what? Like, I see it. Some people just say it, but I do see it with you. And the events that you put on, I've not been to one, maybe in the future, but they look world class. So all credit to you, because there's so many people trying to conquer this coaching and consultant space, especially over the last 2 years. Everyone seems to become a coach or a consultant, but you've definitely got something right, mate. So all the power to you.
Thanks so much, my man. I appreciate it. And, obviously, I think anybody in our positions, when it's like the online space and we know how filtered everything is, when somebody says to us, like, I can tell how much you care, like when a client will say something like that, or your words right there, there's nothing better than that. When people can see that you are authentic, if you are authentic. We've had a few people who have literally come through our courses in the last 12 months, by the way, five in the last 12 months who have come in and they've literally gone and started coaching coaches and consultants. And we found out that they had literally downloaded our templates, etc., and uploaded them with their own logos on them. And it's so funny when you see the stuff going out about their level of authenticity. And I'm just like, oh dear. But anyway, I digress.
No, it's good, mate. I mean, obviously, I know who you are from getting to know you at Expert Empires and seeing you in London. It was good to catch up, actually, and talk to you in a bit more detail. And when we spoke the other day, it seems like we've got a lot of synergy between what we do. So I think that's amazing. But for the people that may not know who you are, do you mind giving yourself a bit of an intro? Who are you? What do you do? How do you help people?
Yeah, all good. So I'm Neil Shoney Mac. I help coaches and consultants generate leads and sales online for their businesses through custom-built, cherry-picked, repeatable systems. So we've got around 120 systems that we've fully templated. Just you and I are very similar. Like we guinea pig everything that we see in front of us. Like we'll go out and we'll guinea pig things, and the things that hit, template them, and they become something we can pass on to our clients. And over the last 5 or 6 years, been building that out. But whenever anybody comes to us, we cherry pick 3 to 5 strategies just for them. And that is what we build into a repeatable system. So they don't have to reinvent their marketing every single month. They just simply repeat the repeatable systems that are absolutely perfectly positioned for their business.
It's fascinating. I mean, how does one go about even getting started into that stuff? I mean, what was your background prior to getting into the business that you run now?
Nothing related. So studied sport and exercise science at university. Being completely honest, never ever went to class. I spent my whole time having a good time and also PRing, and then that became PR manager, and it became running events. So it was club nights basically at university. So I just worked throughout my whole university time. Really loved the marketing side of running club nights, I guess. And when I graduated, I knew I wanted to start a a large business. And the best thing that came to mind through bouncing some ideas with some friends was, well, a friend actually said to me, you're trying to start all these different weird businesses that you have no experience in whatsoever. And he was like, the only two things that you actually know is health and fitness, and you know events. I thought, good point. So I was like, right, well, obviously the perfect thing to do here is build Scotland's biggest ever health and fitness event at Scotland's biggest event venue with £2,000 minus in my overdraft and no experience, no contacts, no anything. And let's just see what happens. And it was brutally tough. It was so unbelievably tough. I put myself into a really deep hole, hundreds of thousands of pounds in debt, signing my life away with contracts for very expensive venues, contractors, all sorts. And we sold exactly 0 tickets and 0 stands in the first 4 months of hammering it. And I was just like, what am I going to do here? I'm like 21, 22 years old, just fold the company, end it. Like, honestly, like looking across the options, there wasn't many. And the third option was to start studying and find out what has been done before that works. I don't have money for TV. I don't have money for radio advertising, all the traditional things that are done with exhibitions. But I can learn social media, which is free. And I can learn email marketing, which is very low cost. And I can learn Facebook ads, which shows you money in versus money out. At least it did very accurately back in the day. And so that's what I learned, those 3 things. And 6 months later, we put on a show. We had thousands of people come from all over Europe to it. We had 110, 115 exhibition stands with some of the biggest companies in the industry. We hosted Scotland's Strongest Man, Scotland's biggest ever CrossFit event. It was a huge event, and it was a success. But I forced myself. I literally had to become a very good marketer in a short space of time. Like, it wasn't like a dabble in this and let's see if we can sell some tickets. It was like we had to get really good really quickly. And what I realized in that first year was that we didn't need 25 strategies to sell the tickets. We didn't need 25 strategies to sell the stands. We needed a very small group of strategies done very well with a lot of people going through them. And so when we found those things, we built them into a repeatable system. I had no idea that I would ever even end up in the consultancy space, never mind the coaching space. But one of the exhibitors told somebody about us, and they were like, yeah, they sold thousands of tickets, but they didn't do TV. They didn't do radio. They didn't do it. It was social media. It was a little bit of Facebook ads. And this gym asked me, will you launch our gym? And so in 7 weeks, we did a social media, email marketing, and Facebook ad campaign for them. £4,000 spent. They made £297,866 in gym membership sales before their doors opened. And as you can imagine, that ended up in a word of mouth business for the next 2 or 3 years, as I simultaneously ran the events business until we sold it. And further down the line, I had no want to have an agency, have staff. And so that ended up moving into coaching so we could impact more people. That's basically the long story, not so short.
Mate, it's really, really fascinating. I think it sounds like you had a lot of initiative to be able to, because one of the things I always have conversations with business owners around, and also people that are wanting to get started into business, is they don't know what steps to take. They don't know where to get the information from. They don't really have always the it factor to go out there and even want to do it in the first place. I know you said that you wanted this big business, and that was where you started with everything. I mean, how did you go about learning all of that stuff? Because if that was, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 4 or 5, maybe a little bit number of years ago, was the amount of information freely available back then, or was it something which you sought after in a different way?
Yeah, it was probably about 8 years ago now, something like that. And I learned mainly through blogs and YouTube. So I went out there, I just searched, it was like how to sell event tickets. And then something would pop up, 12 ways to sell event tickets. And you go onto YouTube and top 5 ways to sell event tickets. And I would just be looking through everybody's differing opinions. And I just guinea pigged everything until I found the ones that worked specifically for us. And when things started to fall into place a little bit as to, well, this worked for this, so maybe it'll work for this, then I sort of realized that, you know, I don't know if intuition or something is the right word, but I was able to sort of merge things into my own strategies. Like for instance, like influencer marketing is a term now, but it wasn't 8 years ago. But I went onto a blog and it was talking about collaborations, like collaborating with other people, borrowing each other's audiences and things like that. And the thing that actually turned our event around initially from 0 ticket sales, 0 stand sales into people wanting to buy stands and people wanting to buy tickets was I read that and I thought, so what we really need to do here is actually get some celebrities to come to the show. We position them as our headliners. They become the banner for the Facebook cover and everything. They'll tell people about it. We'll get to use and borrow their name and authority status to sell stands and sell tickets. And so we just went out, sent out a bunch of emails. We had our top 5 headliners in the next 24 hours completely for free because it was a value exchange. It was like, right, so you'll headline the event. And that was including somebody flying all the way over from the US, who's a really big name in the health and fitness space. And we had these 5 headliners. We put them on the banner. We updated the cover photo and we started sending out not even new emails. It was emails to people that weren't responding to our emails. We just hit the reply button to emails we had already sent. Just a quick update. This is some of the people that are coming to the event. Really excited to hear back from you as to where you would like a stand or something along the lines of that. And we just started getting responses and people were like, yeah, send me the updated floor plan. Who's going there? Who's going there? And one of the first people to come back randomly when we had our headliners was a really big name in the exhibition space, which funnily enough, they didn't realize they were hitting reply after a thread between themselves. And they were like, this guy has been annoying us for like 4 months. Like, what? Do you know what? I'll probably shut him up if we just buy a stand. Right. But I was jumping for joy. I was loving that. So they bought a stand and then that became influencer marketing again, because then we went to the other exhibitors and we said, not only are the headliners, these celebrity headliners are coming in, also the biggest names in the health and fitness industry, this name is now confirmed for a center stand. And then that got people moving even more. And I realized the power of borrowing, borrowing influence, if you will, borrowing authority status, collaborations and things of that nature. We even inside our private coaching, we have a training we get everybody to watch now in their first 6-week game plan, which is all around collaborations and the many things that you can do with them. I mean, this is technically a collaboration, right? We're chatting together. I'll put things out on my socials. You'll put things out on your socials. You're going to be on my podcast as well. And, there's great dynamic there. Collaborations can go to a much easier extent when you're just looking inside your stories. So you go into your Instagram stories, you post up even a memory with somebody who also has people following them who's within your target demographic. Throw up a story. Remember this from 2 years ago, tag them. What's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to share it into their own stories. You're going to get discovered, Collaborations are amazing. And it was one of the main things that turned us from going bankrupt into selling the company 4.5 years later to one of the biggest event organizers in the UK. Like it was awesome.
Insane. Absolutely insane. So collaborations is a really key one for me. So it's something which I credit a lot of my success to. I remember going to networking events. I remember going to mastermind type events. I remember going out and just having a mentality of just trying to meet as many people as possible because I didn't know anything. When I look back at my journey and how I've kind of developed and gone on that process of business growth, it's all been because of other people. Yes, I've worked hard. Yes, I've done what I've been told, but without asking those questions and without the partnerships that I did, and I didn't even know there were partnerships back then. It was just me helping someone for free. So I always think people come at it with the wrong mentality and the wrong mindset. I've just always been someone that's just liked to help. And I get the same vibe from you. And what happens is when you're in that mindset of I'm just going to go there, soak up as much information as possible, provide as much advice as I can from my own experience. It's amazing what then comes back. And that's been the thing throughout my whole journey, really, in terms of audience building, in terms of building a brand. It's been off the back of other people's audiences. It's not been really through my viral content because I haven't really created that much viral content in reality. I've created more for other people, ironically, than I have myself. It just explains a lot in terms of how you can do amazing things in quite a short period of time when you've got the right people around you.
Yeah, 100%. And I can see that with the type of content that you put out there. There's lots of collaborations in there, but we can see it with some of the biggest inverted commas personal brands in the UK and actually worldwide. Even when you go onto their social media platforms, most of their content is them interviewing other people, and they end up on the stages. They end up, in expensive consultancy and things like that. And rightly so, like for exactly what they're great at. But a lot of the time people think, if I interview somebody, like everybody's just going to leave my platform, right?
It just doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, in terms of your collaborations, and if you were going to give advice to other people on it, what would be the first step that you would take if you hadn't got any reputation and you didn't really have any experience? How would you go about initiating? Because there's lots of people that listen to this that are at the beginning and they almost sit there and say, it's all right for you guys. Like, you've been doing this for ages and you get how it works. But what would the process be to start initiating those sorts of relationships? What would you do if you had to start all over again?
I'd probably either have a podcast or a collective summit of sorts, an opportunity to bring the experts together, where you're the inverted commas authority status who's putting the thing together, whether it is the podcast or like a 1 day, 2 day, or 3 day summit, and bring all the experts together, become close to them, and go with value add continuously. It's going to turn into a lot of inbound in the next few months for you, both between the people who discover you because you've been borrowing other people's audiences, but also those people who you might even be looking at it as getting access to their audiences. They themselves will bring opportunities to you. Like we sometimes book celebrities that are rightly so, not just because they've got followings and things like that, but because they actually are like masters of mindset or discipline or something like that helps build the entrepreneur. We're very focused upon building happy coaches and fulfilled coaches as well as wealthy coaches. So we bring in people like that to guest speak at the live events because I don't feel like I'm the expert in that stuff. And so, like, for instance, we had Ollie Ollerton from SAS Who Dares Wins. He came to our last live event to speak and sort of close out the event. And ever since, me and Ollie speak most days on WhatsApp. We were bouncing ideas together yesterday about implementing like courses and masterminds and live events and things like that, potentially into his business. And so you might be looking at collaborations as a way to get followers, because by the way, that's what everybody thinks the goal is I get more followers. I get that message all the time in the DMs. Albeit that you will get followers, the most amazing thing is you'll get the right followers. You'll get people who follow with high intent, that trust you because they trust the person that was interviewing you or whatever it may be. Collaborations is one of the fastest ways to grow an audience while simultaneously getting 90% of the way there to reaching out to you right from the word go, like that type of people following you. So I think it's one of the greatest things out there. It's completely free for the most part. I mean, Ollie had a fee, but for the most part, you do a podcast or something and position it right, then it's free.
Mutually beneficial, isn't it? I remember the first time I decided to do a podcast was my first podcast was called Brand New. It was with one of my good friends, Jack, and we didn't really have any sort of motive behind it. We did it because we were bored in lockdown, actually. That was the reason why we started it. We wanted something to do in the first lockdown. And everybody, for some reason, became available on Zoom. So everyone that was like an influencer, strong personal brand in business, I think it's because it was new and because it was a little bit sexy. Everyone just started saying yes to opportunities. So we had people on there, which we would never have expected. And I think sometimes it's just getting out there and asking. And that's what I love about podcasting. You ask someone to come and do like an Instagram live with you, and they're like, oh no, I can't do that. I'm not available. Go through my PA. You say, I've got a podcast. Would you come onto it? Suddenly it's like, yeah, I'll come onto your podcast. Not a problem at all. And people, I think, sometimes think it's quite difficult to do. I was really surprised with how easy it was to launch a podcast. I don't know if you found the same and how much you have to do with, but for me, I have Audio Boom and it's £10 a month and I record it. I kind of edit the ums and ahs out a little bit sometimes and then I press upload and it's live. So I was really surprised with how simple it was.
Yeah, it's really quick and easy to get up and running with things. There's I don't know if it's different with that application, but there's ever so slightly, and it's you just Google it realistically, but you need to set up your show on things like Apple Podcasts manually slightly, and then plug and play that. Yeah, plug and play that in. But I mean, you could realistically outsource that if you really needed to somebody. And it really is just a Google away. It's just the only thing that's a little bit techie, I guess. But other than that, it's super easy to do. It's super easy to record. You just do it on Zoom. I did an interview with somebody yesterday. Literally, you download the video from Zoom and then you put it into iMovie. You chop the ends off and then you download it as an MP3. That's your audio.
It's so
and
easy.
You download the video and that's your YouTube. And that's the whole thing done. And it can be so unbelievably impactful. Do you want to know something that's actually something that we noticed sort of at the tail end of last year? Because before I started doing the daily podcast at the start of this year, and it was just I really put my foot in it on like the 31st of December. I don't know if I actually had a drink in me, but I posted that I'm going to do 365 podcasts in 365 days. And then instantly going into day one, I was like, I actually need to record day ones today before 7 p.m. my time, because that's 12 a.m. UK time. So I was like right to the wire to get it out in time. But anyway, long before I decided that I was going to do this, I actually had a podcast anyway. But the last podcast episode I had done was in like February or March. And I was still getting every single person that was coming to us into the private coaching. And I mean in October, November, December, I wasn't telling anybody this podcast even existed. And they were like, I've binged every single episode of the podcast. And we obviously still get it now because we've got the daily one. But back then, that was a big realization point for me, that the power of people probably not having distractions when they're listening to podcasts. It's like they're driving. So like the only thing they're listening to is you. They don't have the TV on. If they're out for a walk, the only thing they're listening to is you. And I think there's something there that's a bit of a dynamic of it feeling a lot closer to them than some other content that can look a little more flashy. And so that was a big realization point to me, the way that a podcast actually influences people to become clients. It's huge. It
creates a really intimate relationship, I found, as creepy as that sounds. but it really does. So I'll be sitting there listening. I remember my first ever experience of this whole world really was when I was listening to property podcasts. So I was listening to the Progressive Property podcast, and there was this Irish guy called Kevin McDonald that was he was running the show. And I hadn't seen what Kevin looked like. I had no idea who he was really in the grand scheme of things, but I went to this free 3-day event. And I remember going into the toilet and I could hear this Irish voice in the background. I'm like, I know this voice. Where the hell? And he comes in with his stripy shirt on and like he stands there and I'm like, I know you. So we look at it. But it's weird. It was like, he turned around and he went, I don't know you. I was like, I'll be listening to you in my car as we've gone through. And he was like, oh, have you listening to the podcast? I was like, yeah. And suddenly that relationship was formed next to each other. And I ended up spending quite a considerable amount of money with him buying his training programs from it. But if I hadn't have listened to that podcast, it was probably about 3 hours long of 3 different episodes. I wouldn't have had that immediate trust in what he was talking about and what he was saying. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss with long form content. I think the world's very much gone towards short form, TikTok, Reel, YouTube Shorts type content, that they're focused so much on the numbers and the views that they actually lose grasp of what really matters when it comes to content. And that's building that trust factor with someone and building a relationship where whenever they see you, it's like, you've really helped me, because you can't do that, in my opinion, in a 10, 15, 30, 45 second clip. It's a bit crazy.
Yeah. I had this conversation with somebody on a Q&A the other day where they told me their stats for their first ever reels that they'd put out there versus what they were getting for their longer form video. And it was like, oh, when I do a longer form video, it's like just under 200 views. But when I do an IGTV, I can get like 1,500. And I was like, yeah. And then they said, so I'm only going to do reels going forward. And I was like, put the brakes on here. I was like, what do you think has a higher chance of impacting somebody to come into your DMs and say, I want to work with you? A 14-minute video where it's fully immersed them. It's shown them a system that that trumps anything else that they've seen before. It's put something in better words than they ever were able to articulate themselves, that overcomes objections, that maybe even has elements of story and proof in there, or a 45-second video with fast cuts in between, no detail, and sort of giving a little bit of a quick aha moment. And they were like, oh, well, obviously the longer video. And I was like, well, if you have 198 people who watch that longer form video, and if you have even 75 of them that are getting near to the end of it, that is a really great group of 75 people. But there might not be anywhere near that amount of impact in the short form. I see the value in it. I do it, but I mix it up. So I have long form, I have short form, I have carousels, I have single images, mix it up, because there's different benefits to different types of pieces of content. That whole short form thing, it can be dangerous for the person who wants to actually get clients rather than just views.
I completely agree. I think, like I say, there's definitely a place for it. I always get there's always somebody that always go, yeah, no, but I want followers, I want more growth, I want it faster, I want the metrics, I want the impressions, and it's like, it's great, but what would you rather have? 1 million impressions or 5-10 grand in your account every single time? Like, what would you want? Well, I always want the revenue, obviously. So, well, if you need to do that, you need to start demonstrating your commitment to wanting to help people, and that was. I don't really have many regrets in my journey. The one regret that I do have was that I didn't start YouTube earlier. That was one thing, because that is the one platform which I've only been doing consistently probably for 7 months, something like that. There's only probably 50 or 60 videos on here now, but it's the one thing which, if I was going to, and I hate doing this because it goes against everything that we're about as a company, but if I was to silo off a channel in terms of what channel makes the biggest difference, bearing in mind we teach LinkedIn and social selling, the thing that everybody always says to me in any form of direct message is, I've watched a few of your YouTube videos and it's so clear that you know what you're talking about. I don't get that from any other content. I don't get that from Facebook content. I don't get that from my Instagram. Even when I upload the videos onto Instagram, so I've done some tests where I've uploaded like full episodes onto Instagram. I don't get that. I don't get it whatsoever. The only ever time where I have got it on LinkedIn is where I've done newsletters. So a newsletter content it proves to be quite resourceful from a lead gen perspective, but they then still go to a webinar, which is an hour long. And that's where they then see more interactiveness. And that's where they get to see how much we know. So I just think, like I say, the geniusness, I know it's a pain having to do a podcast every single day. And I know you bulk record them, right? But I don't think people quite comprehend how powerful it is. And also from a creator's point of view, because when I first started, I couldn't talk. I could not communicate very well. So it's almost like when you've got a small audience, small numbers listening to a podcast, it's almost a good thing, because they won't then listen to all the muffle and all the absolute trash that you talk at the beginning. Because if you go back to my first episodes, they were terrible. I mean, was that something that you found? Have you become a better communicator? I know it's quite a simple question, but with other people out there, they find it difficult to talk, especially for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Is it something that you've grown into as you've gone along?
Yeah, 100%. And I was the kid that when we had like a tiny little thing when we were like 15 or 16 years old for standard grades or whatever they were called, in the English class, we had to get up and speak for 3 minutes in my school, because like we've got more sheep and cows in the Highlands than we do people. There's about 8 people in my class, genuinely.
It's a bit like my primary school, that was. That's small, yeah, exactly.
So we had to get up and we had to speak for 3 minutes, and I mean about anything. There was no structure. That was just to tick a box so that you could graduate the class or whatever. I faked being ill for 9 days. Because I was like, if I fake being ill for a day, then I'll just have to do it the next day. But if I fake it for like 9 days, I might get to do it just for the teacher. So I don't have to do it in front of like 8 people. Like I was that scared of public speaking. And second to that, when I like went into the coaching space and I was like, I know what I need to do here. If I want to grow the coaching side of this business, I need to do two things. I need to get comfortable on camera and I need to get comfortable in speaking on stages. And so I was like, right, I just need to lean into it. My wife like references quite a lot to like her family when we're at things, because they're like, oh, we saw your videos online. We saw them on Facebook. We said, love you in the comments, that type of thing. And she's like, you should have seen him when he was recording his first videos. I would lock myself in a room with a camera, beads of sweat, with an intention of having a 60-second video. And I mean, I would be in there for 4 hours trying to record a 60-second video. And it would be like having to delete stuff off of the camera, change
expletive after expletive.
Honestly, like changing the battery to try and get out a 60-second video, and I just couldn't do it. And she just used to hear me like screaming, like swearing at the end of every time I messed up. And it would be talking about something I knew inside out and back to front, but I was so nervous. And to be honest, the thing that taught me to speak on camera ended up not being standing in front of the camera. It was actually Instagram stories, I think it was. So it was just speaking to stories because it was so casual. It was 15 seconds at a time and I could easily delete it if I wanted to. And so that got me a little bit used to speaking to camera and knowing that people would see it. And then going in front of a proper camera, I got a little bit more used to it. But about 3 or 4 years down the line here, I mean, there's not a single podcast this year. We've done over 100 so far. There's not a single podcast, even the ones that are like 35, 45 minutes long, that I did a double take or I edited out a single piece. Like if there's a mistake, I'll joke about it. Or like if my voice croaked, I'll laugh about it and I'll go going through puberty again. Like I'll like joke about it and just let it flow. And I don't care about getting things wrong. Like I just let it flow now. And I'm extremely comfortable speaking on camera, interviews, public speaking, but I was the most fearful person of both of these things. So getting the reps in is definitely one thing. Just getting the reps in and getting used to it. It becomes easier just about every single time you do it. And the second thing is, maybe this is more a public speaking type thing, but positive self-talk. Like tell yourself you're excited to get on stage. Tell yourself that you know the subject point better than anyone else in the room. So what am I worried about? That those types of things, saying those things to yourself internally, you wouldn't blurt those out, obviously, because you'd sound like an idiot. But saying those things inside your head can change your state from fearful to literally actually feeling like I can't wait to get up there. And that really helped me. Even speaking at Expo Empires just there. Like obviously I've done quite a lot of public speaking now, but it's still 400 people in a room. Like there's still an element of fear there. And it was weird. I didn't really feel internally what I would call nervous throughout the day, but I lost my appetite completely.
I'm the same. Exactly.
No appetite at all. This weird feeling. I couldn't drink anything. Like it was really weird. And when I was about an hour out and I had walked into the room, then I just started playing those things in my head. And I was like, I can't wait to get up there. I can't wait to deliver what I have here. I know it's going to impact everybody so much. I can't wait for people to go through the worksheets. Like I was just playing those things in my head. And honestly, as I was like walking on stage, I was like, I'm just exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. Like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's so weird. It is so weird being that fearful and then getting to that stage of, I can't wait to get up on stage.
It's such a weird one. I remember speaking to, so when I spoke in 2019, I was speaking to a guy called Dan Meredith. And
I know Dan, not Dan really that personally. Like we've spoken a couple of times. Yeah. I spoke to him when he was at EE, but I've known of him for a good while.
I was speaking to him because I saw him. I've got a really bad habit of energy drinks, right? I mentioned this yesterday when we spoke, but I remember seeing him carry around a Monster can. He was carrying around a white Monster, and I was like, I mean, you're a monster. He's like, oh yeah, that and modafinil, that's like completely changing my life. And I remember it was really weird because I never heard anyone speak about it before, because I've never got really nervous before speaking on stage. But like you, I can't eat throughout the day. Like I really struggle. I lose my appetite no matter how big the crowd is. I really struggle. And it was 6 o'clock when I was speaking. I think I was the one after you, technically, if it was when you spoke at EE. So the graveyard shift is what we call it. And I remember I hadn't eaten anything. I was drinking water, but I'd probably about 3 monsters down. And I'd also taken modafinil that day. And I literally, I had the shakes when I was going up, and I was an absolute mess. And I remember going up on stage and delivering the talk, and I was fine as soon as I hit it. But I didn't even make it to the party that night because it just crashed completely and utterly. And I think you can find yourself getting worked up with those sorts of things. And I remember I was trying to find every coping mechanism possible when it came to that sort of stuff. But I always remember there was something that I learned with public speaking, which I haven't spoken about on here at all before, but it's the structure that I use whenever I do it. So I'll always use what am I trying to say? Why am I trying to say it? And I actually say this to myself when I'm talking. What's one thing that's useful in terms of how someone can change it? What's the story that backs it up? What are you going to do if a problem comes up that gets in your way? And then what do people need to do right now to make a difference? And I remember that story, what, why, how, story, what if now? I remember it's just a system that we program all the way through. And I noticed myself doing it subconsciously whenever I'm talking. What's the point I'm trying to make? Okay, why should people care about it? Now, what can they do to change it? What if something comes up to get in their way? And then how can they take an immediate action to sort it out? And I found that by doing that over and over again, suddenly when it comes to communication, whether it's on podcasting, YouTube, as long as I follow that system in a 15-second or an hour, you make a point really, really well. And it's something that, I've never spoken about that before, but it was something that I learned. It was a game changer for me when I went through it. But yeah, that story.
That's class. That is absolutely amazing. And the fact that it's become automatic for you. So you're literally playing it out without it being like a conversation in your head. It's just automatic. You're going through the stages, and that must really help with you not having to just be like a PowerPoint reader continuously when you're on stage as well.
It's the best skill. It is literally the best skill that I ever learned. And it was I can't remember where I learned the framework from. I didn't make it up. I learned it from somewhere. I can't remember who it was, but it was something which, it's just naturally now when you've done it for so long, it really, really works. I just thought it was clever in terms of that system. When I got taught it just changed my life, completely changed it in terms of talking. So if you ever watch any of my PowerPoint presentations, you'll see keywords you see what, why, how, story, what if now. Every single time it comes through. Now, we had questions that we were meant to go through, and I haven't asked really any of them whatsoever.
I've had so much fun. It's been a great conversation. I've learned stuff on this conversation, about the public speaking and when we're talking about collaborations and everything. I've loved this conversation. It's been great.
It's all good, mate. It's all good. I mean, like I say, there's some ones which I really want to go into, which I know will help a lot of people, because I know you help a lot of people within your programs. And one of them is, if we were to, we touched on it briefly, but I want to go back into it. But if you were to remove everything that you've kind of done, everything that you've accomplished, all the connections, all the relationships, but you still had everything that you've learned, so the knowledge that you've gained over time, no money. So go back to that phase where you were at the beginning again. 500 quid is the limit I normally give people. You have 500 quid. What would you do to start and get going? So if there was someone listening in that position, what would be your initial steps that you'd encourage to take, that you would follow if you were in that position?
I would, first of all, position myself as the person that helps the people that I want to sell to in about 2 or 3 months' time. I would create social media platforms, but probably only 2 initially, maximum, maybe like Facebook and Instagram, or it might be Instagram and LinkedIn, depends on who you're serving. I would create content for that market, and I would engage in any way I could to get their attention. So that would be going into hashtags, going into the followers of people who already have that target demographic and engaging with them so that I could be discovered. And then about 2 or 3 months down the line, I would do a launch plan for probably 5 to 10 people, absolute max, I was going to work with in a 90-day or 180-day period, and position it as like a case study builder or a beta test for a program that's going to come out. And the way that I would launch that is I would go to, first of all, I would do it like a staggered launch. I would go to anybody who has already expressed interest. Maybe they reached out in the DMs or something over the last 2 or 3 months. Anybody that expressed interest, and say, because you expressed interest, I'm coming to you before anybody else. This is going to go out public, but I'm coming to you before anybody else. Get the first 2 sales over the line. Second thing I would do is I would probably run a 5-day free challenge, and that's where my £500 would come in. I would use Facebook ads as Facebook and Instagram ads alongside getting as many of my new warm targeted audience in there as possible. And I would use that as the next staggered piece of the launch by saying to them, on Monday, I'm going to be putting this out publicly. But because you're inside this challenge, you're going to get access to the spaces before anybody else. That might fill all your spaces. But if you've got any spaces left, then on Monday, that becomes the public launch. And you say, we had 10 spaces, 8 spaces have literally already gone because we ran a challenge last week. So final 2 spaces, tons of urgency and scarcity. And you'd maybe throw in a urgency post nearer the end of the week with the last space available. That would be how I would get things kicked off.
Love it. One of the things that you mentioned on there's 2 actually that I want to talk about in a bit more detail. One is the content. You said get onto social media platforms, and 2, which we'll go into, and the other is advertising. That is something that I am bombarded with questions on. So I think that'll be a good way to end, I think, in terms of the conversation. So in terms of content, the common obstacle that we find with when we're having discussions with people around it is, I know I should be posting. I get it, right? It's important. We know we should be online, but how do I work out what content type to create and what to say? To those questions, what would your answers be? So first of all, what content type should people be doing, in your opinion, from your experience?
Well, there's sort of 2 trains of thought here as to like categories of these posts. Like, for instance, an engagement-based post. The sole purpose of it is there to increase engagement. And we also have proof-based posts. So that's, people you've worked with, or it may be even just telling your own story if it's early days, so that people can see that you have experience of solving this problem and doing it efficiently. Then there's things like story-based posts, which are there to tell your story and show that you're both relatable and remarkable at the same time. I've been where you've been, but look where I am now, rather than just doing the whole social media thing of I'm remarkable, I'm remarkable, I'm remarkable. Humanize yourself a little bit and show some relatability by telling that story. And then outside of that, we've got educational style posts. So that's when we would actually just be educating people on the things that they're trying to solve. If you can tie that into a story, then you get a double effect. So you can say like, so this is this common thing that most people are struggling with. This is how you solve it, such as this person who I work with who went from here to here by implementing just this strategy. Now you've got like a triple effect. It's like story, it's proof, it's educational, all in one. And there's probably another couple there that just aren't popping into mind, but I would look at some of those categories anyway as key places to look in terms of the type of stuff that you should be putting out there. And then if we're trying to figure out, well, what should the topics be in relation to what I do? I usually say to people, come up with the top 10 goals of your target demographic. Top 10 goals. And the funny thing is, after about number 3, they have to usually get quite creative, right? But it can be really good. So like, for instance, we've got somebody who we work with who helps dads, right? Helps dads become like the healthiest version of themselves. Everything health and fitness, but it's specifically working with dads. And it's like, what are the goals? And it's like to lose weight, to build muscle, to feel more energy, to become a leader, like that type of stuff was what was coming out. So I'm struggling with the rest of them. And I was like, well, what about longevity? It's probably something that people aren't really talking about, but it's probably their number one, if anything.
Point. Yeah, really good point.
Like the whole reason why they're getting healthier is actually so they're around for more, so that they see their kid go to school, go to high school, graduate, maybe go to university, to get married, to have their own kids. So they see their grandchildren. All of those things become priority number one, but your competitors are probably just not even talking about it. So you can go quite deep with this as to what some of their key goals are, and you can talk about those. And the second thing is, write a list of 10 things that your target demographic don't want to have to do to achieve any of these goals and start creating content around that. So for instance, our target demographic want a lot more leads and sales, but they don't want to have to become a marketing wizard to be able to do it. They don't want to have 42-step funnels. They don't want this, that, and the other. So we can tell them the simplified way. So it's like, if you don't want to have to create 42-step funnels to generate your next lead, then here's 10 different things that you can do to get your next lead without having to create anything. And it would be like starting conversations, doing an Instagram poll and following up with people, create content with a very, very compelling, strong call to action, like loads of different things like that. But the idea would come from, what is it that they don't want that to do? If you did that exercise, you'd already have 20 things to feed off of. And to be honest, you could probably rotate right through them. And by the time you get back to number one, it's not that you need to come up with new goals. You just need to take a different angle to the conversation around that goal. So that alone could just be like a one-sheeter that you refer back to all the time. And then you just build it into, is it going to be a story-based post? Is it going to be educational? Is it going to be an engagement style post? Or what's it there for?
Absolutely gold, mate. Absolutely gold. I think one of the things that really helped me as I was going through it, and it's something that sounds so easy and it accompanies what you said there really, really well, is I just started taking more photos. It was the one thing when it comes to like getting myself out there. I knew that in business, I had to be active. So I had to be on phone conversations like this or on Zooms doing interviews. I had to be on sales calls, at networking events. And whenever I was struggling, I knew that I wasn't busy enough. I didn't have enough going on. So I'd almost force myself to get into places where I could at least take that next step forward. So it's one of the things I always say to people is if you're struggling for content ideas, it's normally because you're not doing enough and you therefore not got enough to talk about. So it's almost that accountability partner that you need in yourself to give you the kick. Because if you've not got anything to say, you need to start telling your own story a little bit more and making your life a little bit more interesting, as bad as it sounds. Like it's quite difficult sometimes for people to hear. But this conversation here, this could not have happened. And we could have just gone, do you know what? We're both too busy. We've got loads going on. However, you put an hour in and you communicate with somebody and you jump on. This has probably got 40 or 50 different pieces of content in this that could be leveraged and used, and it's positioning and it's authority building. You don't have to do a Zoom thing like this. You can go out there. And one of the biggest bits of advice that I got told right at the beginning of my journey was don't tell people what you're doing, show them. And I remember watching that video that I mentioned at the beginning. If people haven't seen this video, by the way, if you go to Neil's profile, it's the link in his bio and it's at the bottom, which is join his private coaching. It's a video that sits on there. And it's actually a really good piece of content. It's technically like a invitation to book a call video, but you can see the story that's sewn in there. And it's not him just telling people how good he is. It's him showing the results that people go through, him on stage is speaking. And it's that sort of content, which you don't need a professional videographer to do. You can do that with your phone. You've just got to be in the mindset of just record a little bit of everything that you're doing each day and then put it into a short form video and then put it out there. Use an app like InShot to put it all together. There's tutorials on YouTube that you can watch for free on how to do it. It takes like 10 seconds to do. But by telling people, it becomes so much more real. And that's my thing with content. I don't like to overcomplicate it too much. And I love that what you've just said there, because it's so simple for people to do. Tell your story, get yourself out there, and just have fun with it at the same time. Because the moment it becomes a chore is the moment you'll find a reason not to do it. But I have got something on it. Your podcast every single day. How on earth are you coming up with things to talk about? Because I tried it and I ran out of things to say pretty quickly. You seem to be the master. What are you on, like 100 days now in?
I think it's 105 or something today. It's 105 or 106. Yeah.
How have you been coming up with the ideas? How have you come up with the ideas for that? How's that come about?
So a really great way to come up with great content, if you've been sharing content for any length of time, is go into Instagram, go into your insights, go to reach, go to post saves, go to comments, all of the different metrics, and rank them from top to bottom over the last year. And it shows you the things that went down best. And then you can create a podcast off the back of it. Yeah. It's an absolute peach. I mean, that'll help you come up with what your lead magnets should be. It'll help you come up with what your new product should be. It'll help you come up with podcasts. It'll help you come up with what should you realistically just repurpose on social media. You know, even if you were going to be doing public speaking and you've got you can talk about whatever you want, go and see the things that your target demographic absolutely resonated with. And so I do that quite often. I look at the things that have performed best over the last year, things that have performed best over the last month, 6 months, etc., because different things pop up depending upon the time. Especially when you're doing a daily podcast, you need to look for creative ways to find new winners. But that's a great thing to come off the other side of. But imagine you've got a carousel on Instagram and it's one of the highest performers, and it's 7 ways to get leads from Instagram without spending any money, which is actually one that went down really well. So, and we actually just reshared it the other day as well. But what I did was I then said, well, instead of that being one podcast episode, that can become a series. And what we've realized is when you do a series, you get a lot more views and you get into the charts, because people binge 7 episodes in one go when they discover the channel. The episodes are short also, so there's more binging there. So more views, more downloads, and then you start to get into the charts, and the charts then help you get discovered by other people as well. So coming up with the ideas, that's the first place I start. Second place is just the questions that are actually coming up inside our private coaching or in the DMs or anything like that. So if somebody's asking me a question, I know that other people have the same question. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is just trying to create mini series out of the bigger topics. So anything that I think is like a bigger topic, like how to run Facebook ads for coaches, it would be a really long episode that would really confuse people for an hour, or it can go out as a 7-part series and we can break it down into 5 to 10 minute episodes. So that's basically how I'm coming up with daily content for the podcast. You should ask me that question in about 75 days time, because things are getting tougher.
Do you know what? We'll do another episode, because I want to go a little bit deeper into advertising, if that's all right. And I don't want to give it the disservice now of going into it and having to skim over it. I'd rather us do a whole episode. We've spoken a lot about organic, I think, on this episode, which is great. Maybe we take the time and do one on paid and how you go about doing that in terms of when's the right time to start doing paid. How do you do it? How do you target? And we'll do like a little mini masterclass on it. I think that would be quite good fun. So I've got some quick fire questions to finish off. There are a few fun ones and a few serious ones. First of all, and again, we say quick fire, answer them in however long you want to answer. Doesn't really matter. In terms of mistakes, like some of the things that I've learned the best from are learning from other people's mistakes and my own. What is the top mistake that you see most coaches and consultants making, or even yourself has made in the past?
Oh, well, if I could throw 2 that are on completely different sides here for coaches, with their personal content, they throw so much educational content out there and they don't have any way of connecting with people, and they don't share enough proof. So it's like education, 7 days a week. And that only gets you so far, because a lot of coaches are also sharing educational posts, the things that make you different, that get people reaching out to you in the DMs to saying that really resonated with me, to saying, can I jump on a call with you? I've got my credit card ready. I want to work with you in close capacity. That's the stories. That's seeing you're a normal human being. And most importantly, it's seeing that you have the capability to get other people results. So there's a lot of people there that have a lot of proof that they're just not sharing because they don't want to come across as salesy. And it's the polar opposite. You're not coming across as salesy. A lot of people are literally watching every single thing you do because they're in that consideration phase of jumping in with you. This is the thing that will get them over the line. And then the second thing is the coaches who are advertising. The biggest mistake that I see with advertising, the coaching space specifically, is sending complete strangers to an opportunity to book a call. So it's just, an advert that articulates why they want to jump on a 30-minute call with you and the value that's going to be on that 30-minute call, when everybody knows that on the other side of it, there is going to be a pitch, or you wouldn't be advertising it. Fair enough to give a value-based call and it's completely for free at the end of something or whatever it may be, but completely different kettle of fish if you're actively paying to get them on that call. They know exactly what's happening. And so a lot of coaches have said to me, I've spent thousands on Facebook ads and I don't think I've even got a single sale out of it. What is it that you've been doing? Well, we were sending people to an opportunity to jump on a call with me. And I know what happens every time. It's an extremely high cost per book call. Most people don't show up to the call. The people who do are sometimes even confused why they're there. And the ones that even entertain you on that call are never in a position to pay. Usually because they don't want to. And it's because they don't have context for you. Even if they thought that this was a valuable call, it's well, let me do a little bit more research on this person at best. And so if it's £100 per book call, it might be 1 in 5 even show up. That's £500 per book call. If those are low quality book calls, it's costing you thousands to make 0 sales. Whereas if coaches just put people into an opportunity to actually immerse themselves with you, whether it's a webinar, a lead magnet, a 5-day free challenge, if you give them that stepping stone, you can have people coming to you for less than £1, giving you their name and email address, signing up to your email list, and going through an immersive experience and being ready to work with you 5 days down the line.
Amazing stuff. Again, I feel like we could go into a lot deeper around that sort of thing as well, can we?
Third episode.
We'll go for favorite social media platform if you had to choose one for your business. So not for everyone else, because everyone's different, right? But your favorite social media platform and why?
Instagram for me personally. Instagram is the best platform, partially because it's where I put the most effort in over a number of years. So a lot of know, like, and trust has been built there with the people who do follow me. But second of all, I just love their collaboration tools. They're like, when we were talking about collaborations at the start of this, the power of them, man, being able to invite somebody as a collaborator and it goes out as both of your posts now, huge, absolutely huge. When I shared that clip of Ollie Hollerton, our views on that post or that video was something like 12 times the amount of followers I have.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it's just because I was like, I don't even know if he'll accept this, but he did, and it went out on his profile as well. We got tons of new followers off the other side of it. We had people actively reaching out to us, but it was also a great opportunity for people to view it. And not to get too nerdy here, but then those people, even if they don't reach out to us, if they don't follow us, they start going into our remarketing lists for Facebook ads, Instagram ads, etc. So, you know, there's so many benefits to these collaborations, tagging people in stories and then being able to share it. We could go on and on with the opportunities there.
Love it. Awesome stuff. Really, really good answer. Now, you spend time in both. You live in one of them, but London or New York?
Oh,
That is a random one.
Can I say neither?
Neither. What would you choose? Where would you choose other than that?
Best place on earth is San Diego.
San Diego. Nice.
It is the most beautiful place on earth. It is perfect for somebody from the UK. It's like 28 to 33 degrees every single day of the year. It's like a carbon copy every single day. There's always a slight breeze. You're beside the water. They've got this mentality there that like nobody smokes, nobody litters, totally frowned upon. So it looks like an undiscovered world. It's just an absolutely beautiful place. If the taxes weren't absolutely ludicrous over there, so it just makes it like not even worth having a business, we'd probably live there. But we'll probably move there in later down the line in 10 years or 15 years or something.
Awesome stuff. And then the final one before we wrap up, if you could have dinner with any 3 guests in the world, you can invite anybody, who would those 3 people be?
Michael Jordan.
Nice.
Roger Federer. And I actually don't know if it would be fun, motivating, or annoying, but Conor McGregor probably as well.
I tell you what, they are some icons, to be fair. Absolute icons.
It's really weird. The people who motivate me in business are typically people who have done sport well.
I agree. Same with me.
Like they have to have a level of discipline over a number of years that most business owners will never have. Like even like what we deem as working really hard, being very disciplined, and over a number of years, they've had to do it probably since they were about 4 years old, continuously all the way through to maybe their early 30s. And they've got extreme pressure on them. They've had to be ridiculously disciplined, but they've also had to put themselves through consistent pain to make that happen. And it's not that I think that I want to be in consistent pain or that I want to have a level of discipline that removes me from things. Like I put a lot of value on spending time with my family, my friends, my wife, my cat. Like time out of work is really important to me as much as time in work is really important to me. But I almost like having somebody there at such a benchmark that I will literally never be at, just helps keep me pulled up. Like in front of my desk is pictures of Roger Federer, Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, and things like that. Not Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or anything along those lines.
Absolutely love it. My thing at the moment, after his comeback in the Masters, Tiger Woods for me is someone that I'd love to have a conversation with, man.
Incredible.
Like
absolutely incredible.
Insane journey, absolutely insane. Again, that is something that I want to talk about a lot more, actually, in terms of it, is how, so my dad was a professional cricketer, so I've grown up from a sporting background in that regard, and that was something that I always wanted to do. So I've got so much respect for them, so much respect in terms of what it takes. Canelo is another one, absolute machine that I love to watch. Floyd Mayweather, as much as he's a moron, like what a guy. Like to be able to fight that well for so long is absolutely insane. But I'm sure we could have loads of conversations around this, to be fair, mate. I'm looking forward to more of them in the future, which would be good. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I know we've ran slightly over what we normally expected, but in terms of where people can find you, and I really do recommend people go and follow you, where can people best connect? Where we'll put it all in the description for people to go and find.
Excellent. Well, first off, just a massive thank you to you, because this has been tremendous. It's flown so well. We've gone down rabbit holes that I think are going to be immensely valuable to people, and there, as far as I know, weren't even on the list to talk about. So those ones are always the most fun. You never know where it's going to go, and sometimes you come off and there's a bit of regret. You're like, hope that doesn't go out as a post. But anyway, tremendous on your part. To find me, just go to my Instagram at Neil Shoney Mac. It looks like Neil's honey, unfortunately, but Neil Shoney Mac, all one word. And yeah, you can feel free to just follow. I post there every single day, or of course the podcast, The Shoney Show. That's every day. And we'll keep coming up with topics to talk about.
It's been absolute pleasure. For anyone that's listening, if you're not already subscribed, we've got amazing people like Neil coming on. Neil will be coming back onto the show as well. This will be on YouTube. It will also be on all the podcast channels available to watch. So please do share it with anybody that you think would find value from it. I'd like to think that people agree that there's lots on here to take away. And as always, with Straight to the Point, we are looking to always bring you the most blunt advice possible, whether you want to hear it or not. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I'll see you all in the next one. See you later.